the border, and they were saying that, these illegal immigrants are coming over and getting more resources than people who had been living in these communities forever. Whether it was people who couldn't find jobs, whether it was the cost of groceries, every single thing was rooted in the economy.
Federal government run by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris just kind of neglected the issue and allowed these municipalities to struggle with the issue on their own.
That's why they lost, Anna. They lost because they put themselves in a bubble, and they put themselves in such a bubble and such an echo chamber that they don't even know what people outside of that bubble and echo chamber are talking about. And he was like, that's still our bubble. So they weren't aware of what was going on outside of the bubble, and not knowing what was going on outside of the bubble is what caused them to lose.
What's going on, guys? We got to talk about Charlamagne, the simp, okay? The guy who supported Kamala Harris no matter what has all of a sudden had his eyes opened up, and he is decided to criticize the radical leftists for their tactics during this election cycle and how they've lost middle-class voters, how they've gone too radical, the gaslighting, all of this stuff. Things that he wasn't calling out before. Maybe a good idea to call it out during the election so that they could kind of switch gears and actually win, not plan for years down the line to have a fix in place by 2026 going into 2028. Foolishness. So this guy is on TYT today. They're having a discussion where they're basically just having a glorified ranting session about the radical left Democrats and how they've screwed up massively and they've lost their core constituency. Without further ado, let's get into it.
Democrats aren't really interested in having conversations. They're interested in playing the blame game. They're interested in providing cover for the failures of the Democratic Party. That's my take, but I'm curious if you agree with it.
Yeah, I don't like broad generalizations, even though, we do say the Democratic Party. I think there are a few in there that still want to have honest conversations. I just think that, some of them got to have the...
Who? You got like maybe one, Fetterman, and that's just, again, after the election, because before the election, he was still talking about cats and dogs, and that's all he wanted to talk about. He didn't want to talk about anything else. So I'm just saying.
The balls to stand up and be able to challenge the party, whatever that may be now. I don't even know what the Democratic Party is at this particular moment. They don't have any real leadership. They don't have any, real messaging. They don't seem to have a real sense of direction at this point. So now would be as good a time as any to stand up and, challenge what was. And I don't get that sense of, hey, we didn't vote for this person because she was a woman. I mean, to be honest with you, I knew more women, it seemed like, who didn't like Kamala Harris than men. Everything was rooted in the economy. I don't care what it was, whether it was, the border, and they were saying that, these illegal immigrants are coming over and getting more resources than people who had been living in these communities forever. Whether it was people who couldn't find jobs, whether it was the cost of groceries, every single thing was rooted in the economy. And I say it all the time, man, what people want in this country is people want to have some money in their pocket and they want to feel safe. That's it.
Young black men would call in to explain why it was that they had turned on the Democratic Party. And I find their perspective incredibly important and very interesting. And I feel that they were just kind of left behind by the Democratic Party. And one of the things that would come up over and over again was the immigration issue. And I'm not under the impression at all that these are anti-immigrant individuals, but people living in places like Chicago, for instance, who have seen their resources, which are usually used to nickel and dime the local black community there, essentially be used for the influx of migrants who came in. Federal government run by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris just kind of neglected the issue and allowed these municipalities to struggle with the issue on their own. And the thing that frustrates me, Charlamagne, is that if you are someone who identifies as on the left, regardless of where you fall on that left-wing spectrum, if you have the audacity to bring up this very real issue, well, I mean, you know how Sonny Hostin will treat you if you bring it up on The View, right? And I think that's an issue. I think that's a problem. The Democrats seem to not ever want to do a little bit of self-reflection to understand, okay, what can we do better the next time around?
This is why I call them the authoritarian left, the radical left. Like, there's a reason for that, guys. I'm not just trying to be dramatic and hyperbolic here. It's because they really are, and they demonstrate it every day, and I prove it with these videos every single day.
Instead, I see them kind of lashing out and blaming everyone else for the loss. What do you think?
I agree. I was a victim of it. I mean, they lost that battle a couple of years ago. I remember a couple of years ago when Governor Greg Abbott and Governor Ron DeSantis were putting, the migrants on buses and planes and sending them to so-called sanctuary cities. And then, as soon as they got there, those so-called sanctuary cities, they weren't so sanctimonious, were they? They were literally saying, hey, no, send them back. You can't come. And I said back then, I thought that was evil genius. Yes, it was inhumane and cruel to do that, but on the flip side, you did say you were sanctuary cities, and you did say you wanted these people until you got them. And so then when they realized it was an issue and they were saying don't come, it made the Republicans look like they had it right the whole time. I remember earlier
it didn't make nothing look a certain way. The Republicans did have it right the whole time. They did have it right. America knew, which is why they elected Donald Trump, is because they knew. They were like, look, we effed up. We sorry. Please, Trump, get back in the dang office. Don't let this cackler win.
And it wasn't even just about the fact that, the migrants were coming over, that she was just complaining that they're getting more resources than we are. I had a guy, he works in a parking garage in New York. He saw me one day and he came to me in tears, talking to me about how, there were gangs that were coming over, tearing up his neighborhood. And he was saying he knows it's because the border needs to be closed. This is a black woman I'm talking about and a Spanish man. These people were not MAGA in any way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. They were just talking to people about what was going on in their communities. In New York City, Mayor Adams let a bunch of migrants stay in a school overnight and made the kids that went to the school do homeschooling that day.
Remember that?
Because he needed to get...
I posted a video about that. Remember that?
The migrants housing for the night. People were calling into the radio station complaining about that. So when I get on the air and I say that, or if I'm in an interview with, I think at the time I was doing an interview with Fox News, and they asked me a simple question: do I think the border is going to play an issue come November? I told them everything I just told y'all. Next thing I know, MSNBC has a headline that says Charlamagne the God is spreading MAGA messaging. That is not MAGA messaging, and that is the Democrats dismissing what their base was actually telling them, because they already had labeled the issue of the border a Republican MAGA issue, and it wasn't. It was an American issue, and it was people in their party, people in their base, or used to be in their base, complaining about it, and they didn't listen.
So I have to just follow up real quick on...
Boom, and why the hell would you not listen to your own freaking base telling you, hey, if we don't close this damn border, we're going to lose? That was the stupidest thing ever. I think that they just hedged their bets so that they could get these people in, make them legal, and hopefully win it all. They were trying to play the long game. Unfortunately for you, you failed.
We have a undocumented immigrant issue in this country. Why should only the border states deal with it? And if you're sanctuary cities, it makes sense. I don't sanction the way that they did it, et cetera, just like you said, right? So, but we were told to shut that conversation down. Of course, we didn't, you didn't, and that's why we're considered heretics in a lot of ways, and that's why mainstream media oftentimes smear us, et cetera. Figures like Joy Reid, it was being spread that, hey, when it comes to Thanksgiving, don't go to Thanksgiving with MAGA family, and either exclude them from your Thanksgiving dinners or don't go to their Thanksgiving dinners. I think that's super harmful to the country, because then we're going to get into our different tribes and never talk to each other and begin to see each other as enemies.
That's just a ridiculous, thing to say, is because, man, yes, I voted for Vice President Kamala Harris. As we all know, there are millions of people in this country who say that they're funding a genocide, like who can't stand the fact that they give so much money, to Israel's military. I would hope that my Muslim brothers and sisters, my Arab brothers and sisters, don't hate me or don't ever want to speak to me because I voted, for the Democratic Party, and I know that they're so against the Democratic Party and how they support Israel's military. So it goes both ways, is what I'm simply saying. You may not like Trump supporters for something, and guess what? There's people who don't like you for, who you chose to vote for as well.
And the thing that I actually take much deeper issue with is the culture on the left in general that essentially tells people to bubble yourself away from anyone who disagrees, which leads to less understanding. I think in order to be a strong party.
Well, yeah, you end up not having enough votes when you do that because people love to belong. And if they can't belong to your group, they're going to find one that they do belong to. And I say, hey, come on over to MAGA, unless you're like somebody who thinks it's okay to trans kids and to shoot healthcare CEOs in the back. All are welcome.
You need to understand what motivates people to vote for the other side. What are the arguments? What is the other side doing that seems to be appealing to voters? And this like weird willful ignorance, this culture of willful ignorance on the left has led to the demise of the left, and people seem to be unwilling to accept that. I don't think that the majority of American voters on the other side are bad people at all. I want to understand them, and I want us to all respect each other and respect the decisions we make for ourselves in this democratic process. But by opening up dialogue and conversations, I think that it would actually allow the Democratic Party to maybe realize that they've done things in a way that is not appealing to American voters, and they need to recalibrate some of their policies. But again, that would take some humility, that would take some self-awareness. And for some reason, I don't know, the party, the establishment members of the party have really moved away from that. That's more of a comment.
That's why they lost.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's why they lost, Anna. They lost because they put themselves in a bubble, and they put themselves in such a bubble and such an echo chamber that they don't even know what people outside of that bubble and echo chamber are talking about. I was having this conversation with them. I was saying that, man, and I was saying it publicly too. I said, I feel like a lot of the energy and the enthusiasm that exists for the vice president is largely within the party. It's largely within that bubble. I don't necessarily feel it, when I'm out and about. And now that we got more things to compare it to, I remember saying, this don't feel like President Obama in 2008. This feels more like, Hillary Clinton in 2016. I was saying that. And I even heard Gavin Newsom on his podcast. He said the same thing. He said they were out on their governor's tour. And, it was, him and Governor Gretchen Whitmer and Governor Josh Shapiro, Governor Wes Moore. And he said they were going to all of these curated events, right? So they would pull up to these places that, Democrats had, like barbershops that they had already, scoped it out, had the people that they wanted in there, going to these curated rallies. And he was like, that's still our bubble. So they weren't aware of what was going on outside of the bubble. And not knowing what was going on outside of the bubble is what caused them to lose.
I never thought I'd say this, but Charlamagne out here speaking facts, okay? Like, I'm loving the fact that at least after the election, everybody's honesty all of a sudden comes out. Again, Red Pill Anna has been going off on the Democrats for a while. In fairness, Jink has been criticizing the Democrats, but I just can't give him very much credit because he still clearly was supporting the Democrats the entire time. He still supports them now. And I have no respect for that. If you know the party sucks, is ruled by donors, I mean, these people are only corporatist establishment, you claim that they're your enemy, but then turn around and still support them, then it's like you're working for the enemy. It's like you're working for your foe. It's like they got puppet strings and you're going and attaching the damn puppet string to the back of your back and you just, I want to dance for you. That's basically what this fool Cenk Uygur is doing. Anna took them dang scissors and was like, freaking, he cut the freaking cord and said, I'm not your leftist puppet anymore. Okay, Charlamagne, he got his own reasons. Okay, like, there's a lot of different things could have been going on with him. I'm not gonna go into details with allegations of things, but he might have had his own reasons for supporting Kamala Harris. On TYT, they don't appear that we know of to be taking any type of kickbacks of any kind and to be getting any type of favors from anybody, whereas a lot of other people that supported Kamala Harris clearly did. So, these guys are basically open to speak a little bit of truth. So shout out to TYT for not being complete leftist shills, with the exception of their literal leader, Cenk Uygur. So anyway, guys, I agree with the majority of what was said here, but what do you guys think? Drop a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. I appreciate y'all watching the Black Anomaly Rising channel. I'm out.
Next thing I know, MSNBC has a headline that says Charlamagne the God is spreading MAGA messaging. That is not MAGA messaging, and that is the Democrats dismissing what their base was actually telling them, because they already had labeled the issue of the border a Republican MAGA issue, and it wasn't. It was an American issue, and it was people in their party, people in their base, or used to be in their base, complaining about it, and they didn't listen.